All right, we're live on YouTube. Let me get the link. I'll have to remember to hit record on Zoom this time. Recording all the places. Record on this computer, record in the cloud.
Our director actually has a bullet point on one of his slides for the all hands meetings to remember to hit record.
Nice. Yeah, that's definitely what I need. But yeah, I think we'll do the recording after the intro stuff. It seemed to work well last time. I think, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I figured like our habit for our recordings has been to not capture announcements and random comments and stuff, just to talk pretty much. So
yeah. Sounds good.
I just realized there's like a 3-second lag on the YouTube. I popped open the window just to see who any participants were, and then I heard myself like in the background.
Yeah. Yeah, as soon as we start the YouTube, it's recording. So, yep. It's been split. I think the last couple of months, like we've got people, on the YouTube and here. So I'm interested to see if, the changing to the new, now easier to click on link, what the attendance numbers will look like. I guess I'm anticipating more people in Zoom, but I guess we'll see.
For what it's worth, every time I've looked at the YouTube participants, it only shows up as Austin Tech videos. I don't know if I may not be signed in. Can you usually see who's listed?
It's in the chat, I think, or below the stream. It says like how many people are watching.
Yeah, I want to see like who's actually logged in by like names or if it's anonymous or something.
Oh,
And it's not super important to solve. That was just a more than anything else.
Yeah. I am not sure. Well, I think we'll give it like maybe another 7 minutes or so. Start 5 after. Just doing intro stuff. Let people filter in. Chris, you want to test the screen share stuff?
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing, I guess, and then you should be able to test it on your end.
Okay, I'm gonna check the like all panelist stuff just to.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
See,
I see what you're saying.
I'm
Yeah.
getting another dialogue in between that and the share stuff in it. So, but if I make selections, then I don't get like an OK button or something to proceed. So I don't know if that's just a like if I close that and now, yeah, I can't.
As an attendee.
Than that. Well, I'm listed as a co-host
Panelist.
and a
Yeah.
panelist.
Yeah, you should be able to share your screen as a panelist, but
oh, okay, hold on. You know what? I think let me. I was unintentionally clicking just the arrow on the share thing, and that's what pops up a dialog box without with no like okay or next.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, who can share?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So yeah,
who can start sharing when someone else is sharing? Okay.
And I just set both of those to panelists.
Yeah.
So we don't have to stop it in the meantime.
Yeah, I think it'll be good.
Cool.
All right. Let me go back to the slide, I guess. Does anybody know if you can like control Zoom with Stream Deck? And I think there's a few people that are doing the Stream Deck and the OBS stuff, and I know that OBS works well with Stream Deck, but yeah. Yeah. Hey, somebody's paying attention to the live video. YouTube comments. Yeah. But yeah, I think the transitions, if you have the OBS stuff set up, the transitions are a little bit smoother because you can play a video and you hit a button and it automatically swaps between stuff. But I think for us, for this, it works fine, right? Normal Zoom, what we're all used to. That, and I don't think any of us have a Stream Deck set up, so.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
Good. Yeah, people are saying that you can't control Zoom with Stream Deck, so. And I don't even know if there is a competitor to Stream Deck. I mean, I assume that's what all the gamers are, that's the only thing out there. Maybe there's something else. I don't know. Have a Q&A. So Gene is here. Hello, Gene.
Hey, Gene, I caught your message in Meetup earlier today. I'll respond when I can. I was looking for a private message option here to you, but I don't see one, so I'll get back to you as soon as I get a chance. Thanks.
Well, I think we can probably get started. We've got a handful in YouTube, and then about 20 people in Zoom there. So, yeah, is everybody ready? I guess before before I officially kick things off.
All systems go.
Yeah. Launch Control Center. I don't know if you noticed. Changed the background up here a bit, but anyways, thank you all for joining us here. MergePHP September 2020. We made it. 2020 almost over. What we're just counting the months down. So one more month, off the list there. So I think we have a really great talk scheduled for you this month. Looking forward to this. That Ahmed I'm not going to do the intro stuff. But we've done the lessons learned and this sort of talk before. But I think it's going to be interesting to hear from like a more of a modern DevOps perspective. I'll let Bobby get into that. Yeah, I guess a little bit about Austin PHP. We're the longest running PHP group, tech group here in Austin. Back before all this stuff went down, we did 2 meetings a month. Hopefully we can still do, I think we'll have to plan some sort of like party after all this blows over, a social event or something. I think that would be good. But we used to do a social event and a learning event every month for a while. And super happy to get connected here with the Boston and Atlanta group. Chris and Bobby are great guys and have great groups as well. And I'll let Chris go next here and tell you a little bit more about Atlanta PHP.
Okay. Okay, I'm just going to do an abridged version of our announcement stuff here. Let me continue this. We've been in Atlanta just to kind of parallel what Logan said. We're also one of the older groups, not the oldest continuous group in Atlanta, but been around since 2004, I remember. Yeah, 2004. I've been at this over 10 years myself as the lead organizer, but also Chris Farnes is here, my co-organizer as a participant. Anyway, an abridged version today of our announcement slides. Just kind of get to it. We just want to mention, here we go. Our video sponsor, Variux.com. David Edmondson's one of our longtime members and runs a Magento integration shop here in Atlanta. So he's a great guy to work with if you need any Magento stuff done. We want to thank him for support for our group. Just a couple things to mention, a couple of Atlanta events, one not. Connect.tech here in Atlanta, they moved their date to October 14th through the 16th. Actually, I think it's just the 14th now, if I remember correctly. All virtual, I believe. That's a polyglot conference, but a lot of good stuff there for our local people. Longhorn, I'm sure will be mentioned at some point by Logan. And also Refactor.tech here in Atlanta, September 15th, 17th, 2021. Another polyglot conference. But focused on diversity and inclusion and things like that. So it's definitely worth taking a look at. Also, just a reminder, our non-meetup site, atlantaphp.org, we have a Google group for discussion and job posting, pretty low traffic, and also our video archive going back to 2012. So if you want to look back at our prior meetings and find other speakers, check that out. So I will hand it off to Logan or Bobby, I think. I mean, I lost my palette for not sharing.
I'm gonna hit record, Bobby, so that we can kind of transition from intro to talk. All right, 1, 2, 3, go. Unmute. Okay, well, I can't unmute you. Looks like.
How's that?
Okay.
Once I turned on screen sharing, my Zoom window went away and it wouldn't let me unmute. Thanks, Zoom.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start over. How about that, so that we don't have to edit as much. All right.
Go for it.
Hang on. Stop recording. Okay. Ready? 3,
You can
2,
see my screen.
1.
Hi, so I'm Bobby Cahill. I'm the lead organizer of Boston PHP. For those of you joining the recording and missed the other intros, we're MergePHP, a combination of Boston PHP, Austin PHP, and Atlanta PHP. Let's see if Zoom will work with me today. We're generally Boston PHP. If you're interested in checking us out, we're based out of Meetup, so we post all our events there. We're also located on Twitter. Let's see if my slideshow is actually going to work. Here we go. We announce our meetups. Once we're posted them on Meetup, we announce them on Twitter. We have a Facebook group. It's a private group, but if you join and you don't have a really sketchy looking Facebook account, then we'll just immediately accept you. So feel free to join that. We also have a similar private LinkedIn group. These groups are private to reduce spam. We've been around since 2002. We've had 274. This is my, so the meetup.com website does a really bad job of telling you information about your meetup nowadays. So this is what I've gleaned from previous numbers that we knew about and then just kind of extrapolating from there. But we've had 274 meetups and probably something like 210 of them have been in person since 2002. Hold on. Did it skip a slide? I think it's skipping slides on me. Ah, there we go, fixed it. We've been around since 2002. We've had 274 meetups, and we have 3,846 members as of the last time I checked a little earlier today. We focus on education, idea sharing, and open source, and we do that through in-person meetups. We used to do that through in-person meetups. Self-study groups, which is run by Gene Babin, who's on the call, and now virtual meetups. Hopefully we'll be able to do those in-person meetups again soon. And then if you are interested in contacting us, if you want to give a talk, if you know somebody that wants to give a talk, if you have a topic you want to hear about, this goes for Boston PHP later when we're in person, or MergePHP, please contact me. You can contact me, Bobby, at through the meetup site. If you want to talk about, we have a virtual self-study groups, events that we do that are run by Gene. And if you're interested in learning PHP or learning Agile, or there's a bunch of different topics that we cover, and Gene will be happy to give you information about that if you're interested. I keep using my wrong keyboard here. The last slide won't come up for some reason. Again, thanks Zoom. So tonight's presentation is about anti-patterns in PHP. It's given by Ahmed Abdu, who is, he's been in the PHP community for almost 10 years now, and he's super passionate about helping people and improving the community. And it's been a pleasure. I've actually worked on the same team with him at Wayfair, and it's been a pleasure to work with him for the last couple of years. So without further ado, I'll leave it to Ahmed. Take it away.
Thank you, Bobby. Let me try to share my screen, see if this would work. Okay, can you see my screen, guys?
Looks good.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Logan. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Chris. Honestly, I was super happy when Bobby and Ben Edmond told me about the talk, because it's very rare right now to see any group continuing the work of meetups and bringing people together like we used to do before the COVID. Because now groups, even like in Europe or US, are kind of like now a little bit something that everyone is trying to avoid. So this was like a very nice opportunity. Thank you everyone for this. Really grateful to be here and also to join you guys for the first time. Like looking forward to know everyone here. Today's talk will be about like anti-patterns. Like when someone mentions something like anti-patterns, this is the first thing that comes to my mind. The photos that you see here from Suicide Squad, like the superheroes who are kind of like villain, but also superhero at the same time, which kind of like makes things a little bit complicated and weird. This is how I imagine anti-patterns, like the word anti-patterns generally, but the more self-describing photo is this from Injustice. If you ever like read Injustice, if you didn't read Injustice, it's about Superman goes dark side and there is no kryptonite to stop it. Like like no one can stop like Superman in this. There is also like different like versions of Injustice. This is kind of my imagination, like how I imagine something like anti-pattern when someone speak about it. Something super powerful, but in the same side, super destructive on the other side. The talk will be generally, as I told you, about anti-patterns. I'll be giving the talk, but before we go to the talk, let me first introduce you to Ahmed, the guy who's speaking to you right now. My name is Ahmed. I'm in the industry for about like 9 years, working for 9 years now, working at SRE, project manager, but mostly software engineer. Most of my hair, honestly, to the software engineering industry. Basically, I love all like languages, like development languages, but PHP is just a little bit more. And open source advocate for a very long time since I learned development. Basically, I'm from Egypt, the country of like pharaohs, mummies, and the golden mosques and legends and all this kind of stuff. I started my journey in technology when someone introduced me to Linux Debian. That was almost 15 years ago or something like this. That was a very bad start for me. Like my relationship with Debian didn't go well for lots of different reasons. I ended up like using Fedora later for about like 13 years now. And I'm like, I usually code in lots of languages. I don't see any difference between like any problem writing in any language, but my most favorite one, honestly, is PHP, like for obvious reasons, because it's the best. And I use PHP since people like used to see this as a framework or the only engine, and everyone was crazy about like template engine. Back then, like everyone like used to create their own template engine. I remember this time when there were multiple template engines, which was funny since the PHP creator meant for PHP to be actually a template engine. So that was like a very weird and funny moment at the same time. I moved to Germany couple of like years back, almost 5 years now. I live in Berlin currently. Since I moved here, working in Germany since this time. And yeah, in Germany, if you ever visited Germany, by the way, and if you didn't try this Club Mate, you should really try it. And if you're ever coming across Berlin at any time, just give me a call. I would be super happy to hang out with you and show you the way for the Club Mate way. And before we go to the talk, I was like speaking with a couple of my friends today about like how the technology is kind of like changing everything. This is a world map almost, like at least the part that I want to show you. I'm from Cairo. This is the yellow part. I live in Berlin. That's the red part. I work for a company located in Boston, which is sad part. I'm in different time zone from you guys, like so probably I think 6 hours from Boston. If you are in the West Coast, I don't know, someone calculated that will probably be more. So like I think for us in the like tech industry, this is like something that we really have and like no one else like share with us. This is something really unique to us. I never really realized this until I was like editing this in the bio that I'm from Egypt and working in Berlin. Like, oh my God, like something like this is very rare in any other industry in the world. I found this interesting. Thought about sharing this with you. Okay, let's go to start our talk about like anti-patterns in PHP. And by PHP, basically, I didn't mean the language itself, but mostly the ecosystem of PHP. We will go over like so many things. First, we'll speak a little about like low cost and high risk actions, Composer, and some of the anti-patterns that like I have seen: inheritance, standardization, testing, logging, observability, continuous integration, and containers. Some of the topics are related to writing code directly. Others are related to the application and kind of the definition of like software recently. Basically, in each one of those, we'll be kind of sharing a story about something went to the dark side and how we as engineers can give easily to the dark side. It can happen very easily to give in to those anti-patterns without even noticing or knowing what's happening. So for our first item, low cost and high risk action. My guess is that everyone in the meetup love PHP or like PHP, at least, since you guys like attending a meetup that's basically have PHP in the title, mostly. And that's something really fascinating and unique about PHP. PHP have one of the most solid error handling ever across all languages. It's kind of like allow you to kind of like write any code and still execute it, even though some parts of the code might not be working correctly. And this is something really unique to PHP. So my feeling is that like sometimes everyone who's working on PHP ecosystem gets the feeling that everything will always work correctly on its own. Like this is something that we get from PHP most of the time, and we expect that it will continue working on this way. But life is not that easy, and sometimes it gets a little bit complicated. The normal scenario that we are all in, as anyone who's in the industry for some time, worked for any company, small, medium, enterprise, we usually write our greenfield application, started from scratch. Everything is fine. Everything is amazing. Everything is fascinating. You deploy your first application to production. And until this point, I think we all get until this point, get it right until the production part. Here is the part that I think somehow like we usually don't consider in our ideas or thoughts, is that after the deployment to production, this is actually not the end. Always expect after the deployment to production that you will be asked to extend a certain feature, something that it's doing like specific functionality. This functionality will be asked at some point to be extended to something bigger, or even add a new feature to the system that you have. And most absolutely, definitely, you will get a bug report and someone asking you to fix something on the system. And every technical decision you do to react to the previous 3 points that we mentioned to an existing application will either make it harder or easier for you to quickly move the code base, like and make your project manager or anyone from the CXO happy, and in the same time make you and your teammates happy when they work on those points. So it's kind of like balance between those 2 points, how you can actually make sure that your project managers and CXOs happy, and at the same time not hurting everyone else. Anti-patterns in many ways usually make the first people happy, and the people who are working on the project itself not very happy. Anti-patterns is usually what most people can call it low-hanging fruit most of the time. Usually things that you do it quickly, it makes everyone happy, and as a project manager, as a CEO or something. But on the long term, it makes it difficult for you and your team to extend a certain functionality, or add a new functionality, or even fix an existing bug. So this is like how we are like looking into this anti-patterns and this part. So our first part over here. So you usually, when you are like coding, the first thing you usually use, like if you have a new functionality to add, is use Composer, right? Like I'm certain that everyone who uses PHP at least use Composer once to install a package. Everyone recognizes this. This is this star from Star Wars, famous this star. How is this related to Composer and to this talk? First time I heard about the problem that I introduced you to, I heard about it from Sebastian, the creator of PHP Unit. He was in a talk speaking about the most common problems he see people reporting about PHP Unit. And you have a screenshot for something like this. I'll give you a couple of seconds to look at this and try to think what's exactly wrong about this line. The problem about this line is that it has this star over here. This nice star is really amazing, but in the same time, it's really killer similar to this star. This star basically tells Composer that there is no version constraint here. We are not asking you to install any specific version from PHP Unit. Install whatever you want, install whatever you find. That's kind of like amazing when you are working, makes it easy for anyone to kind of like work, like just install something very quickly, but in the same time, it's very destructive. My last time I saw something like this, the problem we ran into is that when someone did something like Composer update, this Composer update updated PHP Unit, we committed, we pushed, it was working locally fine, and then suddenly everything is broken in the pipelines. It's complaining about very weird errors, and we didn't do anything. We just did Composer update. We later found out that something like the star, when you don't specify a very solid version constraint to your application, this will harm you and harm your team, because basically Composer will follow the rule of pulling the next available version. So assume that you started working on PHP Unit 8 and Sebastian, our friend, released PHP Unit 9 and you did Composer update. Congratulations. Now you have PHP Unit 9 without even noticing, and it becomes like a complicated problem. So the first lesson here from this horror story is that always use version constraints. This star is bad. Don't, please try not to avoid it as much as possible. The second part about Composer came from the complaint about this. Like we used to have an application, and suddenly I saw this message on one of the Slack channels. The new Composer package is working locally, but not working on the server. And we're like, what? This is a nightmare. Like someone saying that it's working locally, but not working on the server. That's like a big problem. Like you all experience this problem. So this problem that that was a root cause for this line came from something simple. Someone edited Composer files manually. I know it's hard to believe that someone would edit Composer files manually, but imagine a situation when you are pulling master to your branch or something, and you have a conflict with your Composer. In this case, I would ask you, please try not to edit Composer files manually. Try not to resolve the conflicts manually. In this case, it will be much better to actually ignore all your changes, or even create a new branch to like compare it later. Pull the changes from the like upstream and use Composer commands to add any package you want. It will be much better if you avoided trying to edit the Composer JSON file manually or Composer log, because I have seen it so many times in multiple teams. When someone, for example, edit composer.json and they have a conflict, so they basically ignore the composer lock or discard the changes without noticing during the like conflict resolve. And it's sometimes something like this pass without anyone noticing. This is one of the like very weird problems that I have seen related to composer. Our next hero in this scene, or like anti or villain, or like anti-villain in this like talk about extending the classes. Usually we all use like parent and child classes. We use inheritance in for many things, right? Like all of us use inheritance on daily basis. In inheritance, you usually have a parent class and a child class, which is fine. It's cool. It works and it gets the job done. But there are multiple problems about inheritance. Usually, when people speak about inheritance, they usually add guidelines like you shouldn't have like a class with more than like 3 parents or 5 parents, or depends on like how you are discussing this with your team. Like, and usually it doesn't work like this way. Usually when you use inheritance too much, which is the case that usually happen, each parent in most of the time with 5 or 10 different children, not to mention that ancestry, like the grandparent or the like all the upstream classes, all of them it becomes very hard and it becomes very complicated to change any parent class, even when you have 100% testing coverage. Also, when you use inheritance too much, something like system design is basically thrown out of the window immediately. Because even when you design your classes with correct visibility for each one of the functions, this function will be protected, this one will be private, and you rely on inheritance, usually teams resires to situation when they need to share a specific functionality. And if it's in the parent class, since you are using inheritance, what I have seen is that most of the people will just go to the way when they actually change the function visibility to public. And here you go, the design that you spend time on it will usually be thrown out of the window. And most of the time when you have one class as a parent to multiple children, and someone wants to share a functionality between all those children classes, they usually add it to the parent. So at some point you will find that you have something called, people call it usually God class, a parent class, which is usually a couple of 1,000 lines and a couple of 100 functions. And it becomes a nightmare for everyone to handle this class. Also, honestly, from what I have seen so far, and like by overusing inheritance, especially when you have a project growing over time, we end up in a very bad monolith, classes tangled with each other, multiple classes extending each other. Like, I guess you all like got the idea over here. This is a monolith, my favorite monolith from Space Odyssey. I guess like everyone is familiar with this monolith. I wish if all monoliths were like as simple and smooth as this one, but this is not the case. This is a classic case for like inheritance. When you have a class like this one, a dad class, and it have a function called pay 50% of everything, and a son class which is extending the dad class, and the son class have a function called car, and it wants to reuse the dad function. Basically, with inheritance, you just extend the dad function and that's it. Everyone is happy. But as we said, this method have like multiple drawbacks. If you imagine a taxes for every button in in any buttons we use, I would imagine that the taxes on the inheritance will be always like the highest of all buttons ever. There are multiple buttons that you can use instead of inheritance. One of them is composition. In composition here, if you like, this is an oversimplified example of composition. And instead of like the son class extending the dad, we kind of like now have the dad class inserted in the constructor, and we are not using it as part of like the son class. So that class now like have like is much, each internal function are like way separated from the son one. There are like dozens of like documentations around this. There is a Wikipedia page specifically for this called composition over inheritance. And there is a nice video from a channel called Fun Function that's explaining also composition over inheritance in a very funny way. It's in JavaScript, but I suppose the concept should be the same over any language. There is also, this is one of the things that kind of like, I was super surprised to see it, which is, I saw a message when I first joined one of the companies, and this was the reply I got in while debugging one of the problems in Slack. I cannot test it. It works only in production. I never understood what does this word actually mean. What does it mean that a specific functionality only works in production? This this was like a very hard lesson for me, because when you have a bug or a problem or something that you want to test or reproduce, the first thing that comes to my mind, and I suppose to most of engineers' mind, is one question: how I can reproduce this on locally so that I can test it, create a patch for it, test this patch locally, and then deploy it. But something like this becomes a nightmare. This came as a result of line something like this. That project have an environment variable that's called production or prod, a constant which is populated by 1 in production, 0 in something else, and line similar to this, but it was a little bit sophisticated. Depending or writing a code that have like flow branches depend on the environment that is running right now, whether it's production or staging or local or something like this, is something that very, very harmful, because you have a code that will never be unreachable locally. You will never be able to test it using test cases. Usually you will have to do some kind of workaround here and there to make it work. And usually it will be very harmful. And instead of this, like imagine here, this is the case, like usually this is highly depend on the case that you have. But for this case, for example, we are, for example, populating the URL based on production. So instead of like having the URL hard coded, maybe you can use something like environment variables. Like in your environment variables, you can probably populate this URL. And in the local environment, you can set this value to whatever value need to exist in the local environment. For the staging, you can set it to whatever value needs to be in the staging and production at the same time, and avoid having branches that are unreachable locally. Here, the logic is very straight, very forward. If this is not working, then the environment variable definitely has something wrong in it. This was my like first impression when I saw the like if production do this, else do that, like this cat over here. Our next villain in this story is standardization. This XKCD comic is one of like is my favorite in XKCD. Is as you see here, there is a situation. 2 team members are speaking. One of them is telling the other one, 14 standards. Oh my God, that's ridiculous. We need to develop a universal standard to cover everyone use cases. And the other teammates reply, yeah. And after 15 minutes now, instead of having 14 standards, we have 15 standards. This is like super classic case about like standardization. Like when people look at standards, they usually try to find different ways other than standards, and they end up with something else. And it becomes like more messy than we actually imagine. Like why would anyone like try to think about this? Usually the standardization topic is super interesting when it comes to system communication. Communication in human language is super easy and intuitive. Usually we don't have to prepare ourselves, right? We need just to speak the same language, and that's it. Like right now, I'm speaking with you in English. Germany, you're speaking in German, and that's it. There is nothing more to it other than this. So it's very intuitive when you speak about like something that like human communication. You usually don't think about it too much. You just say whatever you want, and usually most of the time, at least in 90% of the cases, you expect the person on the receiving end will just understand what you mean. When it comes to system communication, we expect that systems will do the same thing. One system will speak something, will say something, and I guess the other part will just understand whatever was said. That's kind of like the case that everyone think about communication, that it will be intuitive, similar to the discussion. But here is how I think about like systems communication. Two pieces of rock trying to communicate. Like when you have two systems trying to communicate, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, think of this as you have two pieces of rock trying to communicate. Saying that we would just send a message over something like is really not enough. Like computers are really not smart at all. They are like super stupid, super fragile. Just one small problem and it will like break everything. So this is why like when you think about communication between systems, you shouldn't really give like PCs or any software we write much more credit than it is. For example, to have a more solid example with API. Honestly, like from what I have seen so far, when we have two APIs and a team that's creating API and another team trying to consume API, and when we don't have something like Open API or Swagger, I know immediately that it's going to be one hell of a project. Like it will not be fun at all. We usually end with, okay, like first we figure out something nicely, which is XML or JSON. Okay, we will use JSON. And then we end up with multiple problems. Guys, did you add this field? And someone reply from the other team, yeah, we did. And then you reply, oh my God, it's not integer. It's not a string. It's an array or it's an object. How do we deserialize it? Okay, we were expecting that you will send us HTTP response in the header. No, we expected that you said, guys, like that we will understand from you that you will send it in the body. Like it becomes a nightmare, honestly. Like from what I have seen so far is that if you have an API that is not using Open API or Swagger, as we call it, like back in the day, specs, then it's not an API. It's just a good way to waste your time and frustrate yourself and frustrate your team. You can check this nice package for PHP that have nice toolings around Swagger. Also check this api-platform.com. It's kind of like a greenfield project that you can use it to start a project very quickly, an API project more specifically, and it have lots of toolings for standardization built inside. It's amazing and really time saver. With Kafka messages, I have like lots of like stories about Kafka messages, but all of them honestly are super annoying. That it feels super annoying just to remember all those stories. Kafka is a great way of asynchronous communication between two systems. When we have system A that want to send a message to system B, but the reply is not required immediately. So we just send this message to Kafka or any different type of queue. It's exactly the same case when we have an API. What is this message exactly? What are the different fields in this message? What are the different data types of this message? When did this message actually change? Is it versioned or not versioned? Just doing something like JSON encode or serialize and just send it to Kafka is really, really super annoying, and usually it ends up with a very weird cases. Like from what I have seen so far, like we usually like one case that we had is that we were communicating with one system, and they send us like something like an email that they are going to do a change, but that change was not planned in the email about the date. So they rolled up the change before they tell us the change, and they were not using the Avro. So our system stopped working, and the message have latency policy that was like a little bit short. It was a horror story, honestly. Like we had to rush to kind of like fix everything quickly. And like if you had something like Avro, like schema, it helped you to kind of like avoid all those problems. Also, one thing about Kafka, please don't think of Kafka as a database storage. It's not MySQL, it's not SQLite, it's not any database at all. In other words, please don't serialize like 1 megabyte of data in Kafka. Kafka messages should be very, very minimal. Like it shouldn't come to 1 megabyte or something like this, because something like this make it bad for PHP when it's actually deserializing and serializing again. The process of serializing and deserializing is very costly in PHP, whether it's in JSON or like JSON serialize or the serialize method. It's a very costly process. And also for Kafka, like usually even like Kafka, most of Kafka brokers, the one that stores the messages, they have limit over the message size. So try not to fight this. If you followed something like Avro schema, like guidelines, you will usually not end up with even like kilobytes of data or something. Testing. I guess the second most important invention in the human civilization after like discovering fire is testing. Because basically like without testing, like our uncertainty about like any change that we are rolling out will just spike to 90% or 99%. No one will ever be secure when you are deploying any changes. Writing tests is generally a good practice, but check the function that we have here. It's at the bottom of the slide. The function that's called add, and it takes two arguments, int a and int b, and we have a return type hinting here, which is fantastic. And then the function return 5. And we have this test above this one that's called assert equals, and we are calling this function that's called add 2 and 3 and 5. Well, this test is right. It's not wrong. It's actually passing. If you run it, it would be green. But this test is not a proper test. It's testing what you can call the happy scenario, the positive case. When you are writing tests, try always to like visualize this picture in your mind, that testing the valid case only is not always enough. Should always keep in mind to always test the invalid case. Make sure that the whatever you are testing is not just giving you a false sense of security, that it's tested, it's well covered, it will never be the problem. So keep this in mind. And testing generally is incremental. Like usually having tested doesn't mean that everything is okay. Usually having tested just means that you have a very good base that you can build up on this base to actually add more cases when you face those cases. That's about testing. Logging. This is my favorite part in the whole presentation or the whole talk. I love logging so much because it saved me from all the pain and all the problems I have seen as a software engineer in this in our industry. You know, there is a saying that like you should always plan for your fail, right? Like something like this. So to add to this, always plan to fail in style. like don't plan to fail in a way that will make it horrible and nightmare. Logging is a way to achieve something like this. It will help you when everything is failing. This is your first helper. This is your first assistant. This is your best friend when everything is failing. Imagine the situation when someone coming and telling you, oh my God, the new feature is not working, or this is not working. I imagine, like, I don't imagine there is any software engineer in the world that will like this statement, because it's not nice. It doesn't have any meaningful information. It doesn't say anything. It just says it's not working. What exactly that's not working? What, like, can you just tell me in details? Like, nothing suddenly stops working. There must be something. Um, uh, like, this is one situation. So imagine that someone told you that what's exactly not working and told you exactly in details what's not working, how you react. This is examples of the replies I have seen over the last 10 years that kind of made me almost cry in some of them. One reply that said, we don't know what happened. Imagine that you are writing the software and you have no idea what happened when this error happened. Or this is my best guess. The word guess triggers all the bad scenarios in my mind that we will end up monkey patching stuff on the production, or even asking for production access to edit stuff live. And it's not fun. I imagine that like everyone tried this. Or something like, it's only one customer out of 1,000. I'm sure he needs to clear the cache, which is sometimes the case, but sometimes it's not. Debugging problems usually for software, sometimes it can be very straightforward, like the entire website is down. That's very obvious, right? That's kind of consistent status or consistent state. Something entirely not working. Entire checkout is not working because database credentials are not correct. Something like the entire website is down because Varnish is down, or Nginx is down, or we have an error in the syntax that we didn't catch, or something like this. But the tricky part, and kind of like 60%, or I would imagine from my experience, it would be like 80% of the cases, it's not a very straightforward. It's not the entire state of the system. It is just one point in time. The state of the system was something really unique, something really weird that no one saw it, and it triggered the problem. To know what happened during this moment of time, you need something like logging. Logging are like insurance policy. You never think that you really need logging before you actually start your application, before you have a problem. But when you have a problem and you really need logging, it becomes too late. You always like see that you really need logging when you already have a problem that's happening. So the situation that I imagine, like that you can probably think of this as a good practice to do logging, is that imagine that you have a try catch for a curl or a guzzle call or something, and you are catching the exception that's coming out of this. You shouldn't, in this case, just return and end in this way. You should log that you have a problem and log this problem over here. So whenever you like, I think it's kind of like general rule to establish it. Like when you have any failures that related to performing external operations, like a guzzle call or database problem or something like this, I imagine that you all have seen this multiple times. When you have a call to external service or third-party service and something that's failing, and you figure out at the end that, oh my God, it's not us, it's them. Without logging, it will be extremely hard to see those flakes in time. Like maybe that service that you are relying on is failing. Maybe that third-party payment processor is failing. Maybe that service that we are trying to store our data in is failing. You need to think about logging as a way to actually know this. About logging also, to continue the series of extremely stressful and useless logging situations, imagine that you see an error log like this. Error happened, order not processed, life is hard. I imagine that all of this would seem a fact, right? Like all of those are facts, but none of them is actually useful. Like imagine, like remember the first situation when we said that someone will come to complain to you that something is not working without giving you any context? Logging messages without any context are similar to something like this. Logging messages, think of them as someone is coming to complain to you about something, but you are going to tell yourself in the future when this thing happens that this is a problem. You don't want to hear something general. You want to hear something very, very specific. For example, error happened. What error exactly? Is this an exception? Can you include the exception message? Can you include the stack trace? Order not processed. Which order ID exactly that failed? Like, do we have order ID? Do we have more context? Why did it fail? Like, do we have any context about the logic that failed over here? Usually avoid any words that have a vivid meaning like failed or happened or not working or not processed. Add more context to any message or logging message that you are adding to make sure that when you see this logging message while debugging is a problem, you will be able to understand what was happening, or even more nicely, your teammates will be able to solve the problem without calling you when you are on a vacation or something like this. Yeah, like usually when like I see someone like adding error messages and they don't have enough context, this is also my reaction, because this is someone who put effort in already adding the logging, but he or she just didn't add enough context, like just tiny bit to the state that we want to achieve. One last thing about logging, too much about logging, but it's extremely, extremely important, is levels. There is a saying that Bobby told me about like a very long time ago, is that like if everything is important, nothing is important. I imagine everyone knows this when they are prioritizing work. So if you are like logging every single thing as error or critical or something like this, then most probably nothing will ever be important at all. You should always be reasonable about the logging levels for the messages that you are logging. Make sure that you are not just logging everything as a single level, because imagine that you are getting 10,000 error log messages a day. Usually you will never be able to like see what errors or what new errors exactly happen. You will have to craft them out, and it will be super annoying. In one company I was working for, they had like tens of thousands of criticals every day in the log processors, like, and they view it, but they are unable to actually see what's happening. So now they have to do tweaks to kind of see the spike in the errors, the new error messages, and it's super, super annoying to see what's happening exactly. So yeah, like if you did all of this and reached this point, like why? Like just add nice level for this. Observability. Observability is something in SRE world. Think of it as the eye of Sauron. Basically, I forget to add a photo for this. It's the eye that should keep an eye on your own application. One of the most frustrating moments for me as a software engineer, when I have someone from outside that's not me or my team that is telling me messages like this. Do you know that your website is down? Like, like that was like really annoying to hear for the first time. Like, you know that your website is down? Okay, like I knew, no need to repeat it like every 5 minutes. And after like a couple of years in the industry, I like the second line was the highlight of my awareness to something like observability. Is that we have a situation like this. A customer called and said that he sees something in the checkout that says 503. Like basically, checkout is how the company gets money. And a customer was calling that he says 503, and we didn't know. That was a disaster at this point. Um, as a software engineer, like usually, no one will ever know your software better than you. So no matter how many good SRE people you have in your company, they will not know the details of your software as you. So always create an alert for your website downtime to just know when your website is up or down. This is essential, but it's not enough. Imagine if you have something that checks if the cart is working, but for some reason, for example, the JavaScript that's calling PayPal API to kind of create a token for the payment and so on is not working for one reason or another. You will not have orders, but still your site is up, right? So in this case, you should always think about also watching the business impact of your application. And both parts, usually no one will be able to tell how to do them better than you, because you write your own application like as a software engineer, and most probably you are the best person to decide like how to actually write monitoring. Simplest tool for this is something like Uptime Robot, and they have similar tools in the link like Neuralink, Datadog, Grafana, like bunch of tools. Part of the tools for observability also is to watch for the error messages that are happening in your app. There are a bunch of tools for this. My favorite tool ever is Sentry. It was free until a month ago. I think they sent a message saying that the policy changed. I'm not really sure how, like, did it change right now, but there are similar tools to Sentry also. It's a very nice, it provides enough context and it's very detailed. Continuous integration. Continuous integration is one of the nicest things that existed for a very long time, but kind of like gained a whole lot new like audience in the last few years. Imagine the situation which happens almost in every single team I joined since I started writing code. The team discussed the best practices. After a very lengthy discussion, they agreed. This is the team discussing, and with cats, like photos, because everyone likes cats. And at the end of the day, they agreed on the standards they have. And the decision was basically, okay, let's add it in our code reviews. The discussion is amazing. The decision is more amazing. But here is the trick. We are humans. We have limitations. We are not machines. We will do mistakes. We will continue to do mistakes. We will always do mistakes. Yeah, that's a quote, and I was joking by adding my name. I'm sure like dozens of people already said this. And instead of like, if you ever agreed with your team on roles for best practices, any role, whatever it is, like there is no deployment ever unless we pass all the unit tests. A rule like this will never mean anything unless it was part of the process, unless it was part of this continuous integration. But there are a bunch of tools that help you to achieve this goal. Those tools usually create what's being called application pipeline. How it works is very simple. Usually commit, push to your repository that you are using, Git for most of the 90% of the cases I have seen. This commit will actually trigger a tool, a third-party tool that will execute your best practices using third-party tools or using the tools that you are using, whether it's PHP unit, PHP stand, coding standard check. There are a bunch of tools that help you to build pipelines. For example, GitLab CI/CD, BuildKite, Circle CI, GitHub Actions, bunch of them. Like the market is now full of bunch of like pipelines. Some of them are SaaS, some of them something that you can host based on your preference. Our last topic here is containers. I added the containers because it gained a lots of it became very popular in the last like 5 years. Somehow it became the next cloud buzzword. Like containers now is like in any discussion, usually the first thing that people discuss containers. Everything will make us fast. Containers. How to make the team faster? Containers. The new monolith, I think. First of all, something to get out of the way. Usually people use the word Docker in exchange for containers. Please don't use the word Docker in exchange for containers. Docker is just a company that provide a tool after its name that's called Docker. And the technology itself that's being by the tools, it's called container. So please don't use the word Docker, use the word container. The second part about container is a quick description for containers. A container has something called a container image. The container image is just a compressed archive, contain your application code, the binaries that run it, for example, PHP or PHP FVM in our case, and the binaries config. For example, here in this case, php.ini. Sometimes it will contain extra stuff. Depend on your setup. Sometimes it contains different, like it's very dependent. So usually, like historically, we usually have VMs and you don't ship anything to the VM other than the application itself. With the container world, you ship something called image, which is archive, as we said, that contain your code and the things that actually execute your code also. So containers is very amazing because when you have this archive, you can just have it, run it anywhere. So one thing about containers that I have seen, PHP have amazing opcache for the PHP code. Opcache is the format in which the PHP engine stores the code after it kind of like compiles them, like similar to this. And it's very helpful. Usually, if this is the first request your application is serving, PHP engine takes this request and pass it to the PHP code. The PHP code gets executed, and the engine converts your normal code to something close to the machine language. Let's call it something close to the machine language for now. We call it opcode. And PHP is very nice and cache this code for a number of time. And it have an option which in most machines have a positive number that's called validate timestamp. PHP engine check the file timestamp. Basically, it asks the system when was this last file it changed it so that it will recompile the file into opcode again. And this is expensive process, by the way, this compiling to opcode. In containers world, each container when it's being deployed have its own separate memory, its own separate everything. So an option like this, when you disable it, you see amazing performance boost for your application. This is like the easiest hack ever and trick to make your application be faster. This you can do it in production, but for local development, please don't do it because you need to see the changes when you do any change. Storage also in containers are what they are being called ephemeral. It's not permanent. So don't think about the storage that you have for your application as something permanent. For example, in other words, don't write any logs to the container or to your application local storage, especially the logs or any files, store them over there. Usually try to use, in this case, something centralized. And also, if you are using Kubernetes or Docker Swarm or any method of container orchestration on production, usually it will be very painful if you don't have a centralized logging, or your application is not sending the logs to the centralized logging, because like in containers, it's very common that a container is failing and the orchestration engine, the thing that manages the containers, will see the container is failing. It will just stop the container, start another one immediately, and the logs for what was happening for in your app, whether it's PHP error log or whatever it is, will be just wiped out and it will disappear. It will not be fun to debug it. Another part about the containers is container startup time. Please make your startup time small when you are starting your application. PHP don't take much time. PHP is not Java. It's not whatever other languages are like happening over there. PHP startup time is a few microseconds. So don't add anything to the startup time. Sometimes people add something like Composer install to the container start. When the container starts, do Composer install or do NPM install. This is very, very bad because, as we said, when the orchestration engine sees that a container is misbehaving or something is wrong with it, it will start a new container immediately. And if this container is not starting very quickly, your service will be down for some time. Not to mention that if you have network problems, downloading something from GitHub or NPM, it will be messy also. So that's another one. The next point about containers is that single container image should be deployable to staging, production, and local. The most behavior I have seen in one of the companies is that they have a container for production, a container for staging, a container for local. And when I saw this, I was going to cry because this is basically breaking every benefit that we have from containers. Containers should accelerate development by only one mean, is that you have one container, you deploy it to production and staging and local. If something is wrong, you go find which container is deployed to production, they will load it locally, you have the code, you have the binaries that execute the code, you have the configuration, you have everything. It should be very easy to replicate the same thing. But if you don't have this, then I suppose then you should rethink why you have containers in the first place. More resources in this about like the talk that we have. PHP unit best practices by Sebastian, who's creator of PHP unit. It's a very rich video. He speaks in details about like PHP unit and best practices. It's amazing. And this is a collection of best practices in PHP, videos, articles, and a bunch of like other amazing resources. And this is an article which is my favorite in PHP world, written by Doctrine creator about eliminating visual depth. He speaks about something like in the same way as anti-pattern is, but like from a very interesting perspective. Please check it. And thank you everyone for listening. That was it. Anyone have any questions?
Thanks, Ahmed. That was great. Just give everybody here a minute or two for the questions to come in.
The question at the end of the YouTube chat is actually a good one, if you want to mention that one.
Oh.
Do you have it up?
No, go ahead.
It's don't they bake the code into the container? Wouldn't you want a different image locally for different required dev dependencies?
Yes and no. So like containers are layered, so you have multiple layers in your own container. So on top of the production container, you can add your own specific configuration. Like usually you'll want something like Xdebug, I would imagine. Local development would have something like error reporting set to true, but in production, of course, you don't want to spit all errors on the customer face. So what like you can do in this case is that you can use something in Docker that's called multi-staging build, that you can have your container that's building two stage. One of them is the production, and on top of this production, you add another layer which contain your development tools, which can be Xdebug, different PHP.ini configuration, modify it, and really it should be very minimal, not like big, so that if something happened wrong in production, you should be able to really use it locally also.
Never underestimate our ability to reinvent the wheel, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what my my chat wasn't updating. I'm trying to like read through all the messages. Did you have another one handy, Bobby?
Gene said on the webinar, Ahmed, thanks for staying up late into tomorrow just for us. Smiley face.
Happy to stay up late. It's almost 2 a.m. over here, but I'm really happy, and I'm looking forward for like my next visit, usually in Boston, to attend one of those like meetups in person and see you all guys and get to know you, and maybe I will get you a couple of club mates if they didn't arrest me at the customs or something.
So what is the club mate? Is it a like a cider or something? I couldn't tell. Is it alcoholic?
Surprisingly, it's not alcoholic. It's just tea, but kind of like different types of tea.
Huh, that's interesting.
If you've heard of yerba mate,
oh, okay.
It uses that. It's like a root or something that it uses in that drink, but it's like an energy drink, but it's awesome. I've been to the Berlin office and they have a like free supply of that stuff, and it's addictive.
You're like, I can't stop drinking yet.
Yeah, like in any company in Germany, if they didn't have Club Mate, probably it will be uprising in the company by all engineers to demand for Club Mate. That's
good. It's good to have the energy productivity juice. That's what it sounds like.
Yep.
Let's see here. Ryan says, thank you very much, Ahmed. I guess I had one question, like when working in a containerized environment, like what type of logging do you think is most useful?
Usually it will depend on the budget that you want to allocate for the logging. And if you are running on something like Amazon infrastructure or Google infrastructure, my personal preference is something that ELK stack or Logstash and Kibana and something like this. This will be more than sufficient for my use cases. People sometimes use a more sophisticated way. For example, Datadog can collect your logs. So basically you can embed the logs from your application to Datadog or APM, or if you're using Amazon, I think they have something for logging also. I would say choose the most cost-effective for your case, depend on the platform that you're using.
What makes most sense for your environment, your company. And so it sounds like you would advise more of like a monitoring kind of logging approach for containerized versus like raw application logs. I mean, obviously the application logs are always helpful, but
yeah, like usually like if you're using something like Monologger, for example, you can configure your application to embed the logs to multiple channels. So like it will be very helpful in the containers wallet. You can embed them locally and at the same time embed them to the centralized logging you have, just to be sure that when the container dies or gets destroyed, you have the logs saved somewhere. Like yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Replicating, I think, issues in a containerized environment, that are can be challenging sometimes. And having that container that runs anywhere is certainly a part of that, right?
Yeah.
But if you have like 1,000 containers all running at once, and you only have like 30% of them having the error, or some small portion of them, I think it becomes even more of a challenge on replicating issues, not seen everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. On larger scale, honestly, this was like a life changing for me when I first dealt with my like larger scale company. Usually in a small scale company, you can easily have production access, and if they're like trusting a little and at least give you a read-only access to view what's happening in production. But on a larger scale, something like saying something that I want to have such access to the machine, it's kind of useless, because as you said, you have thousands of machines, and in containers world, it's even more big in this context. You usually have hundreds or thousands of like containers running and serving your application. So it doesn't make any sense to kind of like jump in one of those containers and check it. So usually when you have all those containers emitting logs somewhere, you can even notice very easily that this number of containers are emitting those problems. So like it makes seeing problems very easy in this case from the traditional one. But again, like this is a problem that usually exists on VM world on a larger scale, but on containers world, it doesn't really matter. Like small company, medium company, large company.
Anyone can benefit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Let's see, we've got another question here. Too many windows. It is hard to get caught up on chat.
I think you're referring to the thank you from Emily.
Yeah.
Emily Stamey says, thank you so much for presenting. And Aram Kamjeen says, thanks.
Thank you everyone for hosting me. I hope I was like a nice guest.
It was a good talk.
Don't worry, man. As soon as they allow us to like meet people in person again, we'll get you back over here to Boston.
Do a live talk there.
Yeah, maybe.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess I could say a few words here as we are wrapping up. Thank you all for joining us. We had a good turnout this month. About 30 people between Zoom and YouTube, so it was a good turnout. I don't see too many more questions. I did want to mention a few things about Longhorn for the people that missed it last month. The announcement that we're postponing the conference till May. So definitely check out Longhorn PHP for any updates on the conference. Tickets are still available. The Blindbird tickets are still available, and the CFP is open till December. So we're definitely committed to making an in-person event happen when it is safe to do so. So stay tuned for more announcements on that. Let's see here. Some other people just saying thanks for the presentation, Ahmed. Everybody kind of signing out here.
Thank you so much.
All right. Oh, I guess one last thing is, if there's any comments on the Zoom link, I think it worked well. Having the Zoom link, hopefully it was easier for everybody to click and hop in. We'll continue to do that in the future here. The link won't change, so we'll just reuse the same link for next month. Speaker details and announcements on that coming soon. Chris, did you have kind of more to add here?
Aaron just asked if the slide deck's going to be available.
Ahmed.
I'll let Ahmed decide
Yeah.
whether to answer that.
Yeah, definitely. I will just remove the animation and stuff to clean it up, make it like readable, and send it like directly.
Nothing else for me. Thanks, Ahmed.
Thank
All
you.
right. Well, I think that's it for September. Can't believe next month is Halloween, where we're getting into the holidays. So yeah,
Tears are out.
yep. It's gonna be interesting. Like, are we not giving candy out this year? It's probably not happening. I don't know.
Leave
So,
it in a pile at the end of the driveway or something, right?
yeah,
Throw it at the front door.
yeah.
I'd like to
So.
thank my office chair for doing an unprecedented amount of work for the last 6 months.
Yep. I might have to get a new chair, after all the use it's gotten. Yep. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us this month. I think I ended it like a little too early last month, so I'm like letting it run this month. Somebody else make the decision. Ben, do you have more to say?
I was going to say awkward silence.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely some there. But it looks like you were able to get the link there working.
Yeah, I joined with the wrong account, so that's why I didn't show up as an organizer until Bobby promoted me at the end there.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, good stuff. Thanks for the follow there on Twitter. I had to redo the slide, Ahmed. I'm like, all right, he followed me. I gotta redo the screenshot. So yeah. All right, guys. My cat is telling me it's time, I think. He's bugging me. Time for dinner. Well, nice to see you all. Thanks for the talk again, Ahmed.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thanks, Ahmed.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Take care.